Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at the book of Numbers in our continuing survey of the Old Testament. First of all, let's talk about the name of the book. The Hebrew name of the book is not Numbers; it's Bamidbar. The B part is the preposition in. Literally, it's in the wilderness, and that's a great name for the book because it's going to tell us everything that happened in the wilderness. The Greek Septuagint had the title Arithmoi, which is where we get our title Numbers from. That's because there's two genealogies, or not genealogies, there's two countings, two, I guess you could call it a census, a counting of the people. One takes place in the first part of the book, the other takes place in the last part of the book, but there's a lot of other things that happen in the middle. So I wouldn't have given it that name. I actually like the name In the Wilderness, but we're stuck with Numbers, and I'm probably going to end up having to call it that. Exodus ends with the construction of the tabernacle. Remember, God moves into the building. Leviticus, remember, tells us what happens in the tabernacle. It tells us of the worship, and it's sort of a how-to book mostly, the worship that takes place in the tabernacle. Numbers picks up right where Exodus left off. They've gotten the instructions for the tabernacle now that they've got it, and it takes up the story of what took place in the wilderness from the point of where Exodus leaves off. They're at Sinai, they've just gotten the tabernacle, all the way until they're ready to go into the promised land. So that's going to be, oh, 38 plus years of history that will take place in the book of Numbers. Now, Leviticus versus Numbers. Leviticus describes the believers' worship, mostly the ceremonies, but they are all symbolic. And there's a lot that we as Christians, even though we're not under that Old Testament system, we can learn a lot from Leviticus. Numbers talks about the believer's work. It's an action book. It's a traveling book. It's a pilgrim book. Leviticus is about purity. Numbers is about the pilgrimage. Leviticus talks about our spiritual position. Key word in Leviticus would be holy. Numbers talks about our spiritual progress. I'm not sure what the key word would be, but the idea of failure in the wilderness and yet growth after that can be there. So maybe failure, but continuing promise, our spiritual progress. In Leviticus, we have the ceremony in the sanctuary. In Numbers, we have the history in the wilderness. So Numbers chapter 1, verse 1, then the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. Remember, that's the title for the book, In the Wilderness. In fact, Genesis through Deuteronomy, the Hebrew titles of each of the books are always taken from the first verse of the book. That was actually the way they typically did things in the very ancient world. They would, if you had a scroll, remember they didn't have books that were bound on one side. If you had a scroll, when you first begin to open it, you look for the opening words, and that becomes the title of the book. Same thing here. So the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting on the first of the second month in the second year. Notice how much time has already passed for them to get to Sinai, but especially that didn't take that long to get to Sinai, but to build the tabernacle and do all the things that are described in the later parts of the book of Exodus and also in Leviticus. After they had come out of the land of Egypt, and our story begins there. So here they are. They're at Sinai. They have the tabernacle. God has entered the building. The people are ready, and now God is going to prepare them to eventually pack up from here, and they'll eventually be going. They'll be heading to the land of Canaan, the land of promise. Here we are on a map. Notice I've got the traditional location of Sinai. Was it exactly there? I can't say for sure. But that's what I'm going with for right now. I don't see any reason to change it. They're going to eventually go up to a place called Kadesh Barnea, and to the north of that will be the land of Canaan, the land to which they are ultimately headed. So they're going to go there. In chapters 1 through middle of chapter 10, they're making preparations for the journey. This is over the space of several weeks. They're at Mount Sinai, but they're getting ready to leave. And we already said one of the things they do here is to number the people. So we have a numbering here. We're going to see another numbering when they get to the plains of Moab. That's toward the end of the book. That hasn't happened yet. And so they get all their things ready, and they're off and running, and they're going to go to this place called Kadesh Barnea. As we get there in Numbers chapter 11, they're arriving at least in the area, and the people are beginning to complain. They've been out in the wilderness for over a year now, and God has fed them. And frankly, they're getting a little tired of the food. So they complained to the Lord, we're tired of all this manna. Now, without the manna, they would have starved to death. So, but still, it's been the same diet for the last year and a bit, year and a few months. And so, in their complaint, God says, "Well, first of all, you're complaining about the supernatural food that I gave you, but I'm going to give you something as an alternate." And so He's going to cause an entire giant flock of quail to land in the camp. Now, I'm not sure, this is supernatural, so I'm not sure how God does it. I think, we looked at some of those times where God caused a wind to blow and brought locusts, or He caused the wind to blow and separated the waters of the Red Sea, sort of like a tidal surge. I don't know how He did this, but suddenly they are hip deep in quail. Literally, they're just birds everywhere. All they have to do is pick them up and throw them into the pot and cook them, and people are doing it, but they're not very grateful. Remember, they were complaining against God. They were saying some nasty things about Moses and about God. And so He follows this up with a judgment in which a number of them die with the food still in their mouth. It's like He gave them what they wanted, but then He passed judgment upon them. That's chapter 11. Next, we have an instance where Aaron and Miriam, the brother and the sister of Moses, complain against him because he has taken a wife of whom they do not approve. It's a woman from Cush. That is, Cush is located to the south of Egypt. So I'm assuming her skin was black. Now, the passage doesn't say that, but we have references to that, the skin of people from Cush, other places in the Bible. And I'm not sure if this is a racist thing. I'm not sure what it was about. But in judgment, God strikes Miriam with leprosy, and we read that she became white with leprosy, like not a healthy white, but an unhealthy white. And it's almost ironic that Cush, you just assume, I don't know if it's true, but I'm assuming dark skin, and I don't know if that was the point of their complaint, but God says, "Well, you don't like dark skin. Well, here's what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to give you an unhealthy white skin." Now, why wasn't Aaron struck? Well, perhaps because he's the high priest, and he has to be physically pure. If he's got any physical blemishes, he can't be high priest anymore, and God's not going to mess that up. But Miriam is stricken with leprosy, and she has to come to Moses, and she apologizes to the Lord, and then Moses prays, he intercedes for Miriam, and she is healed. And then everybody has to wait. They've been traveling, and they've got to sort of set up camp and wait for a whole week for her to be. She's already healed, but for her to be considered ceremonially clean. And they wait until this time has passed, and then they can continue on their journey, and they finally get to Kadesh Barnea, to the south of Canaan. And when they get there, some spies are sent forth, 12 spies, a representative sampling from each tribe. And they go out through the land of Canaan, and they spy out the land. Remember, the land of Canaan, even back in Jacob's day, when Abraham and Isaac and Jacob had lived in Canaan, it had been fully inhabited. Well, that hasn't changed, except that the cities are much more fortified than they had been hundreds of years earlier. Some time has passed, and they've not only are they settled in the land, the Canaanites are strong and they're big, and they've got these big cities. And the spies come back and they say, "Man, those guys, they've got cities that are just reaching up into the sky, these great walls, and they've got weapons, and they're big, and they're mean, and they're nasty, and there's no way we can take them." Now, that's the report of 10 of the spies. And 2 of the spies, named Joshua and Caleb, the representatives from Ephraim, that's Joshua, and from the tribe of Judah, that's Caleb, they come back and say, "Yeah, those guys are big, but God is bigger." And so you have a majority report and a minority report. And the people listen to the majority report. "Oh, our representative said that they're too big. We can't take them on. Moses, why did you bring us into the wilderness?" And so what we have now in chapter 14 is a cry of the people. They're complaining. They're saying, maybe we should go back to Egypt. At least we had food there. And, why'd you bring us out here to die? And God steps in and he says, because of your unbelief, you won't be able to go in and take the land. And so you guys are going to be wandering in the wilderness until this entire generation dies out. And then we'll come back and revisit it when your children are old enough to go, and you guys have died in the wilderness, but you can't go in. Who do you think you are to tell us we can't go in? And the people talk about reverse psychology. It's actually reverse sinfulness. The people try to go in without God, and it doesn't work. They fail miserably, and they attempt to invade, and they don't get to first base, and they are driven out and driven back, and so they are defeated here at Kadesh Barnea. And from now on, they're going to be wandering in the wilderness. Now, they're not going to go all over the world. They're in that Sinai Peninsula, sort of bound between Egypt on one side and the Red Sea to the south and east and west. But they're going to be in this general area for the next 40 years. Now we come to chapters 16 and 17, and I'm not going to try to cover everything, but you'd had that rebellion, and now there's another sort of rebellion, and this time it comes from one man, Korah. He's from the tribe of Levi, and he's got also the tribe of Reuben that's sort of backing them up. And he seeks to challenge the leadership of Moses and Aaron. And so he says, look, you guys have gone far enough. This is Korah speaking. For all the congregation are holy, every one of them. God said all of his people are holy, and not only are all they holy, are all of them holy, but also the tribe of Levi is holy, and I'm from the tribe of Levi, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? Who do you think you are, Moses? Who do you think you are, Aaron? I could be leader. Let's just take a vote. Let's have a popularity contest, and whoever's the most popular, he can sort of lead the people. And apparently, he's done his homework, and he's been out doing his political campaigning. And so Moses warns the people. He goes to God, and he's speaking from God, and he says, "Tell you what, you guys can do your election, but God's going to be the one that does the election." And he warns them, separate yourselves from Korah, because something bad's going to happen. Sometimes I'll hear somebody say something that's not very respectful toward God, and I got this from one of my old professors. But sometimes I'll make the comment, I don't know if I want to stand next to him in a thunderstorm. Well, in this case, Moses warns, don't be standing next to this guy because bad things are going to happen. And sure enough, bad things happen where the earth opens up and swallows Korah and his followers. And actually the passage says, and they went down to Hades. That is, not Hades, to Sheol. Hades is how you say it in Greek. They went to Sheol. That is, they went down to the depths of the earth. Now, I'm not sure if Sheol there refers to like the grave or like a life after death. I don't think it does, at least not in that passage. But the point is that God passes judgment right now. He votes. I'm voting for Moses and Aaron. And then in the next section, notice, so they and all that belonged to them went down alive to Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. God cast his vote, and he cast them down to Sheol. But then in the next chapter, in chapter 17, God says, look, we're going to clear up this thing of who's in charge, not who's the leader. Moses is doing that. Moses is serving as prophet. But with regard to Aaron and the Levites and the priests, who is the high priest, we're going to settle that once and for all. And he has them all get their staff out, their rods, like a shepherd's rod, and they place them out. And the next day, one of those rods has sprouted with flowers and leaves, and it's come to life. And it's the rod of Aaron. And so this is God indicating, I'm going to do something special through him. He is my high priest. I chose him. Don't you forget it. And all of the priests from now on will come from Aaron. But this is the sign of Aaron's priesthood. It's striking because later on we're going to have the imagery of a tree that's been chopped down and that sprouts forth. And we refer to that as a sprout or a branch. And there's somebody that gets the name branch or sprout. And it refers ultimately to Jesus, who is the branch of God, the sprout. In fact, he's born, not born. He grows up in a place called Nazareth, which means the branch, the sort of the sprout, the branch. And so here Aaron is shown to be the leader. That's the culmination of this rebellion. And later on, Aaron's rod will be placed in the Ark of the Covenant as a memorial, but that comes later. So notice we had the first 10 chapters at Mount Sinai, and then we saw chapters 10 through 14 where they're traveling to Kadesh and they have that test and they fail. And now chapters 15 through 21, and we saw part of that was the Korah rebellion. But we have the wilderness wanderings, and most of those 38 years take place here. It's not a day-by-day or even year-by-year accounting. We just have a few instances of things that take place, but one more that we want to talk about during this period. At the end of that time, we're going to see them by the plains of Moab. We'll see them at the end of the journey. We'll see the new generation. We'll see several months during that period. And when I say Mount Nebo, that's going to be the death of Moses. Aaron dies, and he dies and is buried at Mount Hor. Notice I've got three mountains. I've got Mount Sinai, I've got Mount Hor, and I've got Mount Nebo. At which point in that last section is going to be another numbering. That's preview of things to come. But what I'd like to look at now is they're at Kadesh Barnea, and they're going to ask permission from the king of Edom. Can we pass through your territory? We won't touch anything. We'll be really good. And he does not give them permission. So God says, I want you to make a detour around Edom. Do not go through their territory. You're not going to be at war with them. You're not going to invade their area. They did not give you permission. Make a detour around it, and they will. And so they'll come up to the land of Moab, and they're also going to detour around Moab as well. That's going to be another story. And they'll eventually come to a position east of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River. So Numbers chapter 20, verse 21, thus Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through his territory. So Israel turned away from him, and hence that detour. Now we come to chapter 21 and verse 4. Then they set out from Mount Hor, that's where Aaron died, by the way of the Red Sea. Notice they're making that detour to go around Edom. They have to go down near the Red Sea to do that. And the people became impatient because that's, who likes detours? I certainly don't. Because of the journey, because of the detour. Verse 5, the people spoke against God and Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this miserable food. I suspect there was some water. I'm not sure where it was, or they would have already died. Notice, there's no food, and we loathe this miserable food. Well, make up your mind. Is there food or is there not food? They didn't like the food. That's the problem. They're getting tired of it. Not that it tasted bad, but they didn't like the monotony. We want a change of menu. Verse 6, the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people. I think the fiery part is probably the fact that they're maybe poisonous. You felt like you were on fire if you got bitten. So that many people of Israel died. Notice there's actually deaths taking place. Verse 7, so the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned because we have spoken against the Lord and you, and they had. Intercede with the Lord that he may remove the serpents from us, and the Lord interceded for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery, and notice how the word serpent is actually italicized. It had been described earlier. I think it's still talking about it, make a fiery serpent. The term here, fiery, is seraph. You've heard of seraphim. Those are sort of fiery angels, but this is a fiery serpent. Make a fiery thing and set it on a standard, and it shall come about that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, he will live. And so we have this image that's to be made, a fiery something or other, and it's an image of a serpent on a pole And Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on the standard. And it came about that if a serpent bit any man, when he looked to the bronze serpent, he lived. You had to look. Now you could have been bitten, and you say, I don't want to look. I'll I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to go. Then you would die. You had to come and look. Now the New Testament points to this as a picture of Jesus. We read in John chapter 3, beginning in verse 14, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. Even so, notice the parallel, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so that whoever, doesn't say whoever looks, but that's the idea, whoever looks through faith, whoever believes will in him have eternal life. So in the same way they had to look, they had to show their faith by actually looking, in the same way we must show our faith. I can't look at Jesus because he's not here, but I can look through the eyes of faith. I can believe in him. I can trust in him as my Lord, as my Savior. And I can be healed as well. Chapter 22, verse 1, then the sons of Israel journeyed and camped in the plains of Moab. Notice you've got Moab to the southeast of the Dead Sea. You have that Arnon River that flows midway into the Dead Sea. That's the northern border of Moab. So they bypass Moab, and they camp in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan, opposite Jericho. Now, chapter 22, verse 2. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, he's the king of Moab. He saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. The Amorites actually come and attack the Israelite camp, and they are defeated, and the Israelites go and counterattack, and the Amorites are not only defeated, they're destroyed, and all their cities are captured. Verse 3, so Moab was in great fear because of the people, for they were very numerous, and Moab was in dread of the sons of Israel. And Moab's not big enough to go in and attack the Israelites. If anyone was big enough, it would have been the Amorites, but they got defeated by the Israelites. And so he looks for supernatural help. And what he does, verse 5, so he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river. When you said the river and you didn't get specific, you were talking about the Euphrates River. In the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, behold, a people came out of Egypt. Behold, they covered the surface of the land, talking about the Israelites, and they are living opposite me, and come do something. And so he's going to go hire this prophet, Balaam, to come down and put a curse on these people. So verse 6, now therefore please come, curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I may be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. If I can get, like the gods, some sort of supernatural thing on my side. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. And that sounds an awful lot like Abraham. Now, I don't know what it is with Balaam. He's described as a prophet. Was he a prophet from God? Was he a prophet from something else? I don't know. But God's going to speak to him, and he's in it for his own purposes, but God's going to give him some instructions, which he better believe. And so that phrasing, I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse, that's what God had promised to Abraham, but here it's being said of Balaam. And so here's Balaam. I like to call him the prophet for profit. He's in it for the money. And he's hired by Balak to come and curse the Israelites. Well, he's on his way. And God initially said to him, don't go. And then God says, okay, you can go, but only say what I said. And I'm not sure what's going through Balaam's mind. But on his way, an angel is sent to take him out. Now, I think it's a little bit like when Abraham was told to go sacrifice his son. God's going to stop him, and God's going to stop it here. And the way God stops it is that an angel is sent, yes, but God opens both the eyes, but especially the mouth of Balaam's donkey. And the donkey has some spiritual insight, and the donkey sees the angel coming to kill Balaam. And so the donkey starts to swerve away, and Balaam says, what's this? I want a mode of transportation that doesn't use its own mind. He wants to go where I want to go. And he tries to pull the donkey back, and the donkey keeps swerving away each time he sees the angel coming to kill Balaam. And finally, the donkey Can I say it this way? The donkey begins to speak in tongues. You say, what? Yeah, the donkey begins to speak in a language other than donkey talk. Instead of going, hee-haw, the donkey starts talking to Balaam, and Balaam, well, like, why are you hitting me? Well, what's this about? And Balaam is saying, well, what do you mean? And Balaam answers back, which is sort of humorous. Until Balaam's eyes are open, he gets the spiritual insight that the donkey already had, and he sees the angel. And he recognizes, wait a minute, I was about to be killed, and this donkey saved my life. I'm not sure how a relationship with the donkey goes after that. But again, Balaam is warned, don't say anything except what God said to say. And so Balaam has had that lesson sort of stressed upon pain of death, stressed to him. So he gets down to where Balak has him, and Balak is all ready Balak is ready for Balaam to give this curse. And Balaam begins to prophesy, and he prophesies a blessing. And at one point in the blessing, this is part of his prophecy, Numbers chapter 24, verse 17. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob, a scepter shall rise from Israel. And you say, where do I ever read of a scepter, that's the sign of a king coming, being announced by a star? I can't help but think this is a prophecy that was given more than 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus. And yet it's a prophecy that maybe later wise men from the east, because that's where Balaam's from, maybe later wise men from the east remembered this prophecy. Somehow I think they had it, because remember, they show up, the wise men in Matthew chapter 2 show up saying, where is the one that's been born king of the Jews? Because we've seen a star in the east. Now, I'm not sure how they put all that together or how that prophecy came down to them, but they're the ones that bring that up. And that's part of Balaam's prophecy. And Balak, the king who hired Balaam, is saying, wait a minute, you must have been hearing it. Let's move to a different location. You must be hearing the spirits wrong. And he tries all sorts of things to get Balaam to put a curse upon the Israelites, and Balaam won't do it. However, Balaam now, and this is after 3 different prophecies in which the Israelites get blessed, and they get blessed, and they get blessed. And Balak is like, well, why did I hire you? And Balaam says, no, let me give you, I can't change the prophecy. I can't change what God's going to do. But I can give you some counsel. And his counsel, you can't curse them, but you can get God to curse them if you can get them to turn away from God. And so the counsel, and the counsel is followed. Numbers chapter 31, verse 16, behold, these caused the sons of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor. So the plague was among the congregation of the Lord. And God actually brings a curse upon the Israelites for their sinfulness, where they had begun to worship other gods. And, it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. But it wasn't Balak and the Moabites starting to worship God. It was that they got the Israelites to go worship other gods. The counsel of Balaam. And the counsel of Balaam is go worship other gods. Be diverse in your worship. Bring new ideas into your worship. Let's broaden that which we worship. Let's be pluralistic in the way we worship. Sound familiar? It should. Now, chapter 32, verse 33, and we're coming to the end of the book of Numbers. So Moses gave to them, to the sons of Gad, and to the sons of Reuben, and to the half-tribe of Joseph's son Manasseh, the kingdom of Sihon, king of Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, the king of Bashan, the land with its cities, with their territories, the cities of the surrounding land. What happened is Reuben and Gad, those are 2 of the tribes, and also half of the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh was so big, their tribe is actually going to split their inheritance. But these 2.5 tribes, they stand there on the east side of the Jordan River, and they look across, and they say, we don't want the promised land. We'll take this land. This can be our inheritance. Now, I used to look at that and say, why did they choose that? Until I actually stood myself on the east side of the Jordan River and looked across to the land of Canaan. From what you can see standing on the east side of the Jordan, you look across and it looks all dry and deserty, and it looks like, the dark side of the moon. Because as you're looking at the mountain range that's right along the Jordan, it is dry and gets almost no rain, and there's nothing green across there. However, if you cross the Jordan and then go up to the first chain of mountains and just go up to the top of that and look to the west, on the other side of those mountains, it's all green and lush and fertile and beautiful. But they were walking by sight and not by faith. And so they will take these 2.5 tribes, they will take this land on the east side of the Jordan. And Moses says, you can have this as your inheritance. You're giving up your other inheritance. You're giving up the land. You can have this. But you're going to have to cross and fight with your cousins. You're going to have to fight with the other Israelites. You'll see the land that you gave up, but then you can come back and settle here. And the rest of the story at a later date, starting in the book of Judges, we're going to see these parts of the land under constant attack from outsiders, from people like Moab, from people like Ammon, from people like Syria, from people like the Assyrians. Whenever Israel gets attacked, these 2.5 tribes are going to get the brunt of it, and they will get attacked first because of their lack of faith.